Coming to you live from the North Pole, it's the Hand Plus podcast brought to you by Movie Changeup. As always, I'm Joe Fricky, joined by my co-host Tristan Mayer, where each week we talk about this week in streaming, whether it's movies, shows, news, updates, anything in the realm of streaming, we talk about it. From your favorite streaming services, including HBO Max, Amazon Prime, Netflix, Disney Plus, Paramount Plus, Peacock, Canopy, which is a streaming service I just learned about today. Don't even know
Been
what
using
that
it a
is.
lot, actually. I'm a big Canopy fan, Joe.
All
I'm
right,
an
well, I'm going to
advocate for
have a
the
movie
Canopy.
recommendation for you, maybe, because so some of the things we're talking about today, I'm going to give a quick review of this most recent season of Too Hot to Handle on Netflix, the episodes that have dropped. Tristan's going to be talking to you about season 2 of White Lotus. I believe that wrapped up just the other night. We're going to talk about our movie of the week, which is Black Christmas. And then Tristan and I are going to each reveal our top 10 streaming holiday movies. It's mid-December. People are ramping up. Kids are starting to come home from school. You got weekends. You got time after work. People are wanting to throw on Christmas movies. So we're going to say, hey, these are the movies that you can go stream right now. Some of them may be more popular ones that you're well aware of, but maybe didn't know where or that they were streaming, and other ones maybe ones you didn't know existed, and us talking about it makes you go, hey, I want to throw a new movie in my Christmas rotation, let me check that one out. And so that's what we're here for. Tristan, it's kind of a late week of streaming for me. I've had some stuff going on in my life that I've been working on, but what about you? How is streaming for you?
Yeah, I watched a couple of things this week. It was definitely lighter for me than other weeks, but building up to the holiday season, I was pretty busy doing a lot of holiday shopping and a lot of driving around to stores and getting extra hours so I can afford all the gifts that I gotta buy. So it was a busy week for me, but I'm happy with what I watched. So what I review is going to be a positive review because what I spent my time with, I really enjoyed. So that's always a good thing. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to this top 10 list, though. I'm currently drinking a winter IPA from the Brooklyn Brewery. So I'm getting myself in theme for the Christmas season here. But yeah, I can't wait to go through our list and see what you argue as being a Christmas movie that maybe I might disagree with you on. If you have any close calls there, it'll be cool to see how the conversation goes. But yeah, I can't wait for the episode. So can't wait to get started.
All right, yeah, so let's kick this off. We'll start with our opening topic, and that is, like I said earlier, Netflix is Too Hot to Handle. I'm not going to lie, I try to remember. I don't remember what season of the show this is. I think it's like season 3 or 4, basically, probably 4. The premise of the show, essentially, is they get all of these horned up mid-20s people from all over the world. It's on Netflix. All over the world, and they think they're going to be on like this new season of this new reality show that they're trying out, and every season they tell them it's going to be a different thing, where basically it's about love and relationships, and basically they're explaining why they casted these like horned up sex crazed 20-year-olds. And then so this season, they told them that the show was called Wild Love, and it was going to be hosted by Mario Lopez. They had Mario Lopez in the premiere saying, hey, everyone, welcome to Wild Love, where you're going to be doing dangerous stunts for love. And they thought the first thing they were going to be doing was jumping out of a plane together. And he was like, also, but before you do that, I got the greatest like stunt person in the business or something like that to reveal the host of the show. And if you weren't aware, the host of the show is a like little robot cone, like almost like an Alexa, is the host of the show. And so that cone rises up out of the limo, and everyone freaks out and is shocked because the premise of the show, they upped the prize amount this year to $200,000. And every time a couple kisses, they lose $6,000 from the pot. If they have sex, $40,000 is removed from the pot, and various infractions in between. And so basically, you have people fighting because their roommates are doing things that aren't allowed in the show. And kind of the ultimate quote unquote idea that they try to pass is to get these people to look for more in a relationship than just sex, and to actually like learn about each other and stuff like that. But that's like what they say it's about, but it's not really what it's about. It's about hot young people fighting and being mad at each other and causing problems. But this season, I would say, I tried to watch a previous season and I just, for whatever reason, couldn't get into it. But this season so far, I'm enjoying. if you're into this kind of show and you haven't checked out Too Hot to Handle, I think this season so far is worth checking out. The next episodes drop Wednesday. The episodes drop on Wednesdays on Netflix, and it's like most shows, most things Netflix is doing recently, where they're dropping things in chunks.
Is it one that would pull me in, Joe? Is it something that you think would pull me past the reality show barrier to actually getting invested?
I don't know. I legitimately don't know. There's a
My
show.
question is: Are the people involved entertaining enough that you just want to watch them do their antics and you don't even care about the structure of the show or what it's about or what the rules are? You just want to see the people be ridiculous.
Kinda, yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's what
I'm
most of
into
these
that.
shows are. It's like a random premise just to have an explanation for why you have a bunch of 20-year-olds living in a house together.
I've been watching Dragula on Shudder. It's coming up to its finale this week. It's also a reality show, a competition show, a drag competition show where everything is horror themed and horror inspired, and it's making me more curious about the reality genre as a whole. I'm suddenly finding myself like invested in these people and like following them on Twitter to see what they think of each episode as it's happening and watching like the interconnected drama of all of these people and the meta-contextual way of that. So yeah, I'm curious to watch a couple more reality shows. I'm itching for something to fill in the Dragula hole as we're getting to the finale next week. So might be one that I check out. We'll see.
All right, and I do have a recommendation for you. This is if I knew this was coming out, it would have probably been number one on my most anticipated for December, but for whatever reason, I didn't catch it. And Netflix new season of The Circle. I don't know if I'd recommended The Circle to you before, if you'd watched it. I can't remember. But yeah, this season of The Circle, they haven't really had a theme before, but apparently this theme is single, so where everyone on the show is playing as a single. But if you understand the show, The Circle, where their only interaction is through like text messages. They all live in the same apartment complex, but they don't see each other's face. They only see pictures of each other and what each other say through text messages. So there are people that catfish on the show. So I'm curious if there's going to be a situation of, a 50-year-old married, mother of three is pretending to be like one of her daughters or something.
Interesting. Yeah. I definitely would check out The Circle, honestly. That's something that I've heard my family talk about, my friends talk about. That's something that I know is big, so that might be the one that I use to as soon as Dragula ends, I might be picking up The Circle and at least review it on here for a bit. Are you gonna watch it and review it?
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm definitely watching it. Like I said, it would have been my number one if I had noticed that it was coming out, but in my research, it didn't pop up. And one of the contestants this season is deaf, and they have like their translator living with them. So it's like as they're signing, their translator is vocalizing what they're signing. I think a deaf person is like the perfect if you wanted a deaf person to compete on one of these type of reality shows. I think this circle is without a doubt the best format for that.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna check out this season. I looking forward to it.
All right, and that kind of wraps up Netflix this week. And HBO Max, we have White Lotus, the season 2 wrap up, which I know you watched. I still need to check out White Lotus. When I have a free second end time, I will do that.
Yeah, I definitely recommend White Lotus. It was one for me that was similar to you, I think, where it's kind of on the watch list. You're like, oh, I'll get to it for sure. And it was never a big priority for me. And I was seeing just so much love about season 2 that I had to jump in. And I've talked about this on the show before a bit, but yeah, it's definitely paid off the setup at the beginning. And I'm really a big fan of the season. I still haven't watched the first season at all, but I'm really happy that I have that to watch now because if it's similar in quality to this, I'm really gonna love it. I thought it was great, interconnected characters. It's a drama, but it's played so seriously that it almost comes off as a comedy at many points. And I think it's meant to be kind of this tongue-in-cheek dark comedy throughout. And yeah, if you like seeing these big name casts, you have people like Jennifer Coolidge hopping in, F. Murray Abraham, you have Aubrey Plaza, Theo James, people kind of like this big ensemble cast, and it's all about these guests that check into a really elaborate hotel called the White Lotus in Sicily. Each season, I guess, is at a different hotel in different countries, and this one is in Sicily, and it's about all the interconnected drama and murder mystery between all of these people, and you learn about their connected past, their connected futures, their affairs, and their all these different connections. So if you're a big fan of that kind of sprawling cast drama and the dark comedy edge to it all, I really think you'd like White Lotus. And Joe, I definitely think you'd like it. So I hope you watch it between now and our best of the year episode, because at least a couple episodes to get a sense of what I'm arguing for here.
All right, yeah, definitely. And also, I can't remember. It was our movie of the week, Black Christmas. What streaming service it was on? But I know you watched it.
I did watch Black Christmas this week. That'll lead us kind of right into our discussion. I feel like I'll look it up what platform it was
Or if you
on,
want to
but
talk about it, I'll look it up.
yeah, Black Christmas. It came out in 1974. If you're a fan of Superman, the classic Superman, the Margot Kidder is in this, so you get to see Lois Lane in kind of this edgy 70s horror movie. This is an interesting one because as you're watching it, it almost makes you like certain movies less because you realize they took a lot from this movie when they made that movie. You know, this came out in 1974, before Halloween, before, When a Stranger Calls. And you look at this and it has so much of those movies in it. And you can see that even though this one kind of falls under the radar compared to Halloween and some of the bigger horror movies out there, I think that this feels like one that all of those directors probably watched. It's on Peacock, according to Joe. That's where I watched it. Now that I think about it, it is on Peacock. Uh, so you can watch it on Peacock. There's also a remake that came out in the like mid 2000s. That's on Hulu. I haven't watched it, but it's kind of divisive. So I'm looking forward to watching that probably between now and Christmas itself. But yeah, this is a fun slasher. It's a bunch of girls in a sorority house being killed off by a killer on a holiday. So you kind of know what you're getting from it. But this was one that came out kind of early and kind of set the precedent for what that looks like. So if you're into those movies, this feels like one that is a precursor to all of that. But unfortunately, compared to a lot of what it inspired, it's kind of slow. It takes its time for sure between the kills. A lot of the kills are off screen. They do a lot of good build up, but then ultimately the kills are off screen. So if you're coming into this from something like Friday the 13th and you want to see really cool, crazy kills, you're not really going to get that here. There's a couple of really good iconic ones, but it's not like the big, intense, gory, quickly running through it slasher. It has that slow 70s horror kind of tension to it, where it's really building up the characters and their interconnected relationships, and then slowly having them get killed off. So if you can take that kind of slow pacing, and you want to see something that inspired a ton of the iconic movies we think of as slashers, this is definitely one worth checking out.
So I looked. I was just curious who directed this movie, and his name is Bob Clark. Let me read to you the incredible filmography of Bob
Go
Clark. So
for
we
it.
have
Yeah, I meant to mention that.
we have
But go
Black
for it.
Christmas, Baby Geniuses, Baby Geniuses 2. We also have Rhinestone, the classic movie A Christmas Story. Well, a classic to some people. I don't like that movie. We also have Porky's and Porky's 2, and that may be it as far as like crazed films. But if you were to put a bad movie director Hall of Fame, I think, no offense to Black Christmas, because like you sounded like you liked it, but it was a slow burn. But I just reading that, I had to bring that up. That I think Bob Clark could be on the bad movie director Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I think some of those are pretty bad, but I also think it's, who can say they directed not one but two Christmas classics and like opposing sides of what Christmas classics can be too. Like there's this like brutal horror slasher, then there's also kind of like the more family oriented Christmas movie, and I prefer this over Christmas Story. I'll say that I think this is his best Christmas movie, and probably his best movie. Definitely his best movie from the ones that I've seen. Not a big Baby Geniuses fan, so maybe he was a kind of a one-hit wonder here.
Yeah.
Two-hit wonder, depending on who you talk to.
Yeah, if you like A Christmas Story, he's maybe a two-hit wonder, but I am not one of those people. All right, and now I believe we move on to our top 10 streaming holiday movies. Essentially, how this is going to work. Do we want to build a final list, or are we just going to say, hey, these are two separate lists? I don't think we really... What?
How do you feel about two separate lists and then maybe a top five? We can build a shared top five.
Yeah, shared top 5. So essentially how this is going to work, Tristan talked for a bit, so I'll start. I'll read my 10 through 6, and then he'll read his 10 through 6. Then I'll read my 5 through 3. He'll read his 5 through 3. Then we'll do my 2, his 2, my 1, his 1. If we get to anything that's in the next person's section, the person will just say punt, and we'll move on so the person that has it the highest can talk about it the most. But I think overall we should move pretty quickly through this because I know Tristan's taste and I know my taste, and my tastes are very generic, and my more out there movies that I have, I don't think Tristan is going to have on his list. So I think we'll have a few crossover movies, but I think overall it'll be separate lists. And with that, the first movie on my list coming in at the 10th spot is The Man Who Invented Christmas, which is on Canopy, a streaming service I didn't know existed, but it turns out it's free. And if it wasn't free, I wouldn't have recommended this. But since it's free, anyone can get the streaming service. And
Interestingly enough, it's free if you have a library card. You need to log in with your library card to order access Canopy. But they have a great selection of like classics and stuff that you would want to watch. And you know, when you put out the Sight and Sound list the other day, like almost the majority of that was on Canopy for some reason. So Canopy has like this randomly great selection of movies. So it
all
also
right,
has Joe's pick here. So
all right. So yeah, Canopy. The Man Who Invented Christmas is kind of like a fictionalized version of Charles Dickens uh, coming up with A Christmas Carol, which is obviously a classic story. Everyone's seen A Christmas Carol, the story, anyways, even if you haven't seen like one of the original versions. Maybe you've seen a Muppets Christmas Carol or a sitcom episode that essentially tackled that same storyline. But it's. And now I'm blanking on the actor's name who stars.
it's one that I would definitely check
Dan
out. Though we're going to talk
Stevens,
about
yeah.
Christmas Carol in a second. So
Yeah,
oh, Dan Stevens.
Davin Stevens stars as Charles Dickens. Um, Other than that, not too many other famous people in this movie. It was kind of Christopher Plummer stars as kind of this old curmudgeon-y guy that definitely is the inspiration for Scrooge, and he plays essentially goes on to kind of play Scrooge and follows Charles Dickens around as kind of this voice on his shoulder type character. But it's kind of interesting how like events in his life happen that cause him to write A Christmas Carol in a certain way. And obviously, like I said, it's a fictionalized version of it. But I still think, hey, if you've watched A Christmas Carol, definitely check out The Man Who Invented Christmas.
We'll check that one out. It's one that's kind of on the radar. Like I noticed when it came out, but it was never one that I thought of as being anything special. So now that you put it on the list, I'm definitely gonna watch it.
All right, and that goes to my number 9 movie. Whoops, and now my phone's making noise at me. All right, my number 9 on the list is one I definitely will go out on a limb and say Tristan has never watched, and that is the Jonathan Taylor Thomas starring classic with Jessica Biel, I'll Be Home for Christmas, which is on Disney Plus. And essentially, the plot is Jonathan Taylor Thomas is a college freshman, and he hasn't been home for Christmas in a while. His mom died, and his dad, who is played by Gary Cole, has remarried. And his dad says, "Hey, if you make it home by Christmas Eve at 6 o'clock, because they live on the West Coast. Jonathan Taylor Thomas is going to college on the West Coast. He says, if you can make it home by 6 o'clock on Christmas Eve, you can have the Porsche that we both worked so hard to rebuild and restore." And then, I don't want to spoil too much, but something happens, and it doesn't allow him. It kind of sets him back on getting home for Christmas, and it's kind of his journey going back to home for Christmas. It's kind of like, in a way, a one-man's Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's the best movie or it's the greatest movie or this is going to make your rotation. It's just one that I personally love. I watched it with my girlfriend about 2 weeks ago. She didn't enjoy it as much as I did, but I think a lot of it for me is baked in nostalgia of growing up watching it. So, yeah, if you want just something new, something different, maybe you had Tiger Beat pictures of Jonathan Taylor Thomas all over your walls, check out I'll Be Home for Christmas.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and not check that one out, I think, but
Wow.
I appreciate your endorsement. I think I may have seen this. I was looking at it on Letterboxd. It looks like one that might have like replayed on ABC Family at some point,
yeah.
you know, on the TV rotation. And
Yeah.
scrolling through the cast and you talking about the premise, I feel like I have seen this at some point in my life. You know, one of those TV background watches. But yeah, not necessarily one that I'll endorse with my whole heart here.
Yeah, we're gonna hit some rough sledding in Tristan's eyes in my bottom 5. But there are
I'm ready for it, Joe.
my top 5 are all movies that I think generally a lot of people like. My bottom 5 are movies that are more for me. So the next movie on my list is the Michael Keaton, bona fide, incredible film, Jack Frost on HBO Max, where Jack Frost is Michael Keaton's character. Jack Frost is a regular human. He plays in a band and a musician, and he tells his son Charlie, he's like, "Hey, anytime you want to see me," because he's like going away to do this show on Christmas Eve. He's like, "Anytime you want to see me, just blow on this harmonica." And then on his way to the show, also Mark Addy who people may know as King Baratheon from Game of Thrones, is Michael Keaton's like bandmate and best friend in this movie. Anyways, so there's a car accident. Michael Keaton veers into the other lane and dies. And the next Christmas, his son is super sad and depressed and blows into his harmonica, and like a bunch of magical swirly stuff happen and goes into the snowman that Charlie made earlier that day, and Michael Keaton's spirit is imbued into that snowman, and it follows him around, and it gets into antics. And for that Christmas, Charlie gets Christmas with his dad again, only in snowman form, and it's fun. It's a fun movie. You're sitting here making fun of my movie, but it's fun, and I enjoy it.
No, I'm not making fun. You know what, Joe? I've seen this movie so many times. I couldn't even tell you the amount of times that I've watched Jack Frost. You know, it was a genuine rotation movie when I was a kid. I watched it. It was especially because when I was going to school, there was like this after school program I had to go to because my parents didn't get out of work until, way later after that. So I would go, we'd sit there and they'd watch like, wholesome, child friendly movies. And Jack Frost was always on the Christmas rotation. I swear we watched that like almost every day back when I was a kid. So I have a ton of nostalgia for that. I'm not going to attack you for that one, Joe, because it hits my nostalgia bone for sure. How can you not feel the magic? He blows the harmonica and the snowman comes alive. Michael Keaton as a snowman walking around, like that's Christmas magic right there, Joe.
When I said Michael Keaton, did you think I was going to say Jack Frost or Batman Forever?
I thought you might be going Batman Forever. I was waiting for that take.
I'm not gonna lie, I don't really see that as a Christmas. There's like winter elements, but I don't really
We're gonna
see
have
that.
to punt this one, Joe.
See that as a Christmas movie. But so next on my list, we talked about Jonathan Taylor Thomas, and now we have another Home Alone connection with Tim Allen, and it's not the movie you think it is. It's on AMC Plus this year for some reason. You'd think they'd put it on more places because it's a great film, and that's Christmas with the Cranks, starring Tim Allen and Jamie.
Oh my! This is a real Joe list right here. He's pulling out Christmas with the Cranks for his top 10.
I love this movie, man. It's a fun movie. Tim Allen and Jamie Lee Curtis are an older couple. Their daughter's moved out of the house. She's in college now. They don't think she's coming home for Christmas. I think she's in like the Peace Corps or something. And they're like, I'm over Christmas. Christmas is not really our thing anymore. It's not for us. We're just going to skip Christmas and go on vacation during Christmas. And they're all on board this plan. All of the neighbors are like weirded out by them because they live in some weird neighborhood where everyone cares what everyone's doing. Dan Aykroyd is kind of like the head of the neighborhood, and he's shocked that they're leaving for Christmas, and they try to decorate their house for him. And then last minute, wouldn't you know it, their daughter Claire is coming home for Christmas, and she can't wait for the annual Crank Christmas party. And last minute, they have to turn things around. They have to change around their flights, get the neighborhood together to help them get their Christmas party going before Claire gets home and realizes that they were going to skip Christmas. It's a fun movie. Don't laugh at me, Tristan.
Look, it's a fun movie. I didn't see that one when it came out. So it's a movie. It's Christmas. It's a Christmas movie. It's definitely a Christmas movie. It's definitely streaming. I can endorse. I can say that.
Yeah. The 7 Christmas with the Cranks on AMC Plus. And now we move to our number 6 list. And this one won't get as much pushback. There may even be a punt here. We're sticking with Tim Allen, and we're going with the original The Santa Claus on Disney Plus. Tim Allen, neighbor falls off a roof, or not neighbor, Santa falls off a roof. If you've been watching the Santa Clauses, definitely changes things of how you view that moment. I'm just gonna say that. I'm up to date on the Santa Clauses. I will review that next week after the finale. And yeah, Tim Allen becomes Santa Claus. He was coming off he was in the middle of filming Home Improvement. He was like the biggest TV star, and Disney said star in this movie. It's a fun movie. It's a great movie. If it's not in your Christmas rotation, what are you doing? I almost thought about not putting it out. There's a couple movies on my list. I'm like, why am I even putting it here? Everyone knows it's streaming. Everyone knows where it's streaming. But I felt like it would have been a lie not to put it on my list. So that's what it is.
Yeah, this is one that slipped my mind in the limited time I was making my top 10. but I had it on the list at some point, and I was like moving stuff around, and I looked, and I was like, oh, I deleted that one. But that would be on my list for sure. It's a Christmas classic. When I think of Santa Claus's like origin story and his powers and like the lore of Santa Claus, I pretty much go to this movie, you know, and I think it established like what Santa Claus looks like, what the North Pole kind of looks like to me. Yeah, I definitely recommend this one. And yeah, of course, it's an obvious pick, but I feel like it's not necessarily put in the same breath as like the top tier Christmas rotation movies, you know. So put it in that top tier list. I feel like.
All right. Yeah, just so everyone's aware, we are a very prepared show that thinks of things long ahead of time. I definitely didn't text Tristan 3 hours ago and said, hey, should we do a top 10 streaming movies list because we really don't have much to talk about this week? That definitely didn't happen. But Tristan, we are, I believe, to your number 10.
My number 10 is one of the reasons I did not give you much pushback on some of your choices here, but this is called Rare Exports: A Christmas Tale. It's streaming now on Hulu and also Canopy. Now that you mentioned Canopy, but this is a movie about a man who lives in essentially like the Arctic North, and he's a reindeer herder with his son. And on Christmas Eve, these like miners come up and mine into to the to the ice around him, and they dig out this creature, this ancient creature that kind of resembles Santa Claus, and it's this horror set around Christmas, and it's a really interesting premise. It kind of like really digs into the lore of Santa. We just talked about Santa Claus and how that has all these interesting takes on the rules and why things happen, and tries to explain all the different things in interesting ways. And this does that, but all in kind of like a horror twist. It really goes back to like that ancient Krampus kind of myth of Santa as this like vengeful kind of creature, and all, but while using like the iconography of the red hats and things like that. So I had a great time with this one. It's streaming on Hulu. It's my deep cut pick for sure, but I highly recommend it. It's a good, fun time that really does some creative stuff. It's not just like, oh, Santa's evil and kills people. It really like gets into all the lore and the questions of like, why would this happen, and what would the industry look like of like people who like found Santa Claus. You know, what would that look like for the people around the town and things like that. So I had a great time with that.
All right. Yeah, definitely check out Rare Exports on Hulu as your number 10. What is your number 9?
My number 9 is also a holiday classic, one that a lot of people probably would have on their list, honestly, and that's Love Actually. I think it's a pretty fun romance. It's definitely set around Christmas, and it has a really wide cast, you know, of Hugh Grant and Liam Neeson and Alan Rickman and Emma Thompson. So you have a really great classic cast there. It's a fun romance, a lot of really great kind of crude humor, you know. So if you're looking for something that's kind of more on the definitely on the R-rated side, you know, something to watch with like your parents or the adults, and when the kids are going to sleep, I think Love Actually is a great fun comedy for that. It's streaming right now on Peacock, so and AMC Plus if you still got AMC Plus going on. So you got both of those options for Love Actually, but it's a great fun ensemble romantic comedy set all around Christmas, so you get to have the snow and the trees and the lights and all of that kind of stuff. So I really have a great time watching Love Actually. It's one of the ones that I throw on this time of year every single year just to kind of get myself in the romantic mood of Christmas.
All right. Yeah, so Love Actually. And also, now what is your number 8? Yeah, I'll be honest, I'm not a big Love Actually person. I've watched it, I've seen it, and there's parts to me that are just weird and creepy. Like the whole uh, sheriff from Andrew Lincoln, the whole Andrew Lincoln storyline is creepy. And the fact that
Yeah,
someone pointed out that Keira Knightley and Liam Neeson's son in that movie are like 3 years apart in age, I was like, what the hell is wrong with that movie?
well, my number 8 is one that we did bring up earlier. It's definitely a kind of classic Christmas pick, and that is Christmas Carol. There's a bunch of options for you to watch of the different Christmas Carol options. You talked about Scrooge last week, but for me, I always go back to some of the old ones. You know, I go back to like the 30s, and I try to pull up the exact streaming platform that this one is on, because you look up Christmas Carol, and there's quite a few of those movies there. But I go back to the old black and white Christmas Carol, the one that kind of started it all for me. It's one that was always on TV every year, and when I think of the creepiness of the three ghosts, I think that's like a really iconic Christmas story. You know, you mentioned the guy who wrote it in your previous pick, but I just love the tale of this, the tale of like the redemption, you know, and facing your past and your present, and ultimately like what you'll become if you continue on your path. And I think that's like a structure that's been used so much in other stories and so well in other stories, all because it comes back to like this original structure. So yeah, I'm a great fan of Christmas Carol, and I don't really have a specific version that I watch every year, but I do kind of like pick a handful that I watch each year. So uh, definitely a fan of watching these.
All right. So 8 is A Christmas Carol, and what is your number 7?
My number 7 is one that I know that you've definitely seen and might be on your list. It's Gremlins. I think Gremlins is a really fun holiday setting. It really uses the Christmas iconography and the colors and the lights. It's just a gorgeous movie to look at, and it's streaming right now on HBO Max. So Gremlins is about a kid and his family buys him this exotic uh, present of this little creature called Gizmo, and gives it to him as a gift on Christmas. And Gizmo is this kind of alien uh, that unleashes kind of this whole family of gremlins that kind of start taking over the town. It's directed by Joe Dante, who I really love as a director. He knows how to take like children's stories and make them like kind of weird and crazy and not like talk down to kids in that kind of a way. So I'm a big fan of Joe Dante's work in like Small Soldiers and Gremlins 2. I really like as well. So both of those are kind of set around Christmas, but the first one is more of the Christmas movie I felt like. So I went with the first one for that one. But I honestly recommend watching both of these because they're both really fun. People talk about the second one is like, oh, that one's a comedy, but the first one I feel like is definitely very comedic, and it definitely leads into the Christmas too. I just love the look of like Christmas in a small town, the snow coming down, the lights, and all that kind of stuff. So I love that part of Gremlins, and that's why I picked that.
And also, isn't that the movie with the great speech about why the girl does not like Christmas?
That is a great speech. Definitely brings you in the Christmas spirit with that performance there.
Yeah. The fact that people saw that and were like, that's got to stay in the movie astounds me. Other than that, I love Gremlins, but it ain't on my list.
Interesting. I got my next pick.
All right, yeah, what's your 6th pick to
All right,
end
I'm
out
at
your round?
6. My 6 is one that is definitely not on your list, but it's definitely a Christmas movie. And I'll argue about that. It's Spencer, starring Kristen Stewart, directed by Pablo Loren. This is about Princess Diana. It's set over a Christmas weekend. You know, she travels out to this exotic location with all of her family coming together for Christmas, and it's a terrible Christmas for her. She's very stressed. She's having this kind of mental breakdown. It's in the midst of when she was the most, you know, at the attention of the press and not wanting to be, and you know, wanting to get divorced from her husband, but not kind of being allowed to, and feeling very, very stuck. So if you've ever had a Christmas meal where you don't want to be there, you kind of hate your family, you want to go home, you're just kind of stressing out and breaking down because you just do not enjoy Christmas with your family, you know. I think this can capture that feeling, and I don't necessarily feel that way, but sometimes you can, you know, sometimes it's just overwhelming to be surrounded by people who can be kind of oppressive on you. And this was a great movie. Kristen Stewart gives like an all-timer performance in this, and I think it genuinely counts as a Christmas movie. There's Christmas trees, you know, they pose for a family meal. There's all kinds of Christmas iconography going on, and it also has like that redemption arc that I feel like is part of Christmas stories too, where it's about like a family kind of and a woman like finding her family. You know, it's about the the growth and redemption that I think is part of a lot of Christmas stories. So I love Spencer. It's on Hulu and on Canopy, so I definitely recommend it.
You are the only human being I've ever met in my life who, on a list of top 10 Christmas movies, would write down Spencer.
Great movie, Joe. I mean, I've seen it too many times now. Great, it gives you in the Christmas spirit, you know.
I got like 20 minutes into it, 30 minutes into it, and I was like, this, I can't. I was hyped for it too, because I actually really like Jackie. And then by the same director, and then I started watching. I got like 20, 30 minutes into it, and I'm like, this just isn't for me.
Look, I told you I'd have at least a couple of Tristan picked on here. You know, it wasn't quite as much of a specific list as yours, but I had to sneak one in there.
All right. And so to kick back over to my list, my number 5, which I know is on your list because you told me, and that is Elf, starring Will Ferrell.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely on mine. It's high up there.
We punting?
Do we punt to the top three? Is my question.
Yeah, is it in your 2 or 1 spot?
It is. It
All
is.
right, so we'll move along. So next on my list, we may be punting as well. I don't know. It's another obvious one. Everyone knows it's streaming. Everyone knows where it's streaming. But it'd be a lie not to be on my list, and that is the movie directed by Christopher Columbus. No, I'm not talking about Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone because that's not a Christmas movie. It has one Christmas scene in it. That doesn't make it a Christmas movie. That's Home Alone, starring Macaulay Culkin.
Not on my list, Joe. Not on my list.
Wow, how do you have a top 10 holiday streaming movies and not include Home Alone? That
Yeah,
I do not.
yeah, we can talk about it, but yeah, I definitely think Home Alone is an all time classic for sure.
All time
But
classic, but not on his top 10 holiday streaming movies. Yeah, it's great. Joe Pesci, Daniel Stern, Macaulay Culkin. Great film about family coming together, being apart, and just a kid going against adults, which is a thing all kids love. Every kids movie should be about a kid going against adults because that's what makes kid movies the best. But back to my
yeah,
previous point, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone or Sorcerer's Stone or whatever you want to call it, not a Christmas movie. Anyways, that takes us to my number 3. Might be on your list, might not be. It's the only animated movie on my list. And that it's a movie that's probably the most recent movie on my list as well, or the newest movie, and that's Klaus, animated movie on Netflix. Also, Home Alone's on Disney Plus if you didn't know. Klaus, it's on Netflix. It's animation style, very similar to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. It's
interesting.
kind of tells this origin story, if you will, for Santa Claus. Focuses on the lead character, and Santa is played by J.K. Simmons in this movie, voiced by, anyways. And basically, they never give like an exact era, but you're kind of supposed to believe it's like the olden days, like maybe the 1800s. This kid whose dad is like the head of all of the postal service. He's like this hoity-toity guy, just a slacker, never really done anything, and his dad gives him the job of he has to set up a post office in like some random northern town up like off in like Finland or something, where and Jason Schwartzman voices the main guy, by the way, and basically start up a post office there. But what he realizes is the people in that town don't like each other. It's basically like a Hatfields and McCoy situation, where the kind of two sides don't get along, and it's kind of coming togetherness, and I really like it.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I have not seen this one, so I'm definitely gonna have it on my list for movies to watch. I've heard a lot of great things about it, so I can't really defend putting it off at this point. So maybe it'll be one that I watch in the next couple
Yeah.
of days, to be honest.
Yeah, you got Jason Schwartzman, J.K. Simmons, Rashida Jones, Will Sasso, Norm Macdonald, Joan Cusack. Just all around good cast.
Definitely gonna be on the list. I love that cast, and yeah, I love you like unique takes on the origin story of Santa. You know, something
Yeah,
where it's
this is
like
definitely
you
one.
take the lore and twist it in some interesting ways and figure out new ways to answer the questions that are like age old Santa questions. You know.
Yeah. So yeah, this was number 3 on the list. Klaus, Klaus, and it's on Netflix. And I believe, maybe I'm wrong. I believe it won the Oscar that year for Best Animated Feature. I'll look it up while you talk about
You know
your
what? I
number
definitely
5.
got nominated that year. I
I
don't know
know it
if it
got
won or not.
nominated, but yeah, if you want to talk about your number 5, I'll look it up and confirm that.
Yeah, my number 5 is the reason that Home Alone is not on my list, and it's because I have Home Alone 2 at my number 5.
Fair, fair.
I love Home Alone 2. To me, it's a better movie than the first Home Alone. I think it's like more of a Christmas movie than the first Home Alone 2. It's like set on New York and Christmas and the snow and everything like that. You really get the iconography and all the Christmas visuals. And the first one is a great comedy, but I just feel like the second one has that really wholesome Christmas vibe that you love to get out of a Christmas movie. And I love that it does the same thing again, but not really. You know, like it's able to up these stakes and up the ante of it without like totally changing the premise. It's still him like alone, but he's not just in a different house alone. It could have been so easy to just be like, oh, and now you know he's in 2 houses alone or something like that. But they were a fun way to take it to New York, and yeah, I love just the visuals of New York and Christmas. So I went with Home Alone 2 over the first Home Alone.
All right. Excuse me. Tried
It's
to mute
also
my
on
mic,
Disney
didn't
Plus.
get to it in time.
Yeah, it's on Disney Plus as well. So if you see the first one a lot and you don't necessarily watch the second one as much. I honestly think the second one is even more fun and wholesome than the first one is.
All right. Yeah, I don't hate that take of having Home Alone 2. I thought you just left the Home Alone franchise off entirely, and I was like, that's a bad take.
Yeah, that would have been a rough take, but I might have another rough take coming up here, Joe. So
Now,
bear with me.
can I go back to my previous Klaus one? Or Klaus was nominated for Best Animated Feature at the Oscars. It lost to Toy Story 4. Get out of here. Toy Story 4
Bad
sucks.
take.
Toy Story 4 sucks. All right,
My
you
next
can go to your list.
my next movie here is one that you already had a take on in this episode previously, and that is Batman Returns. Joe, it's a Christmas movie. There's snow. There's a Christmas parade. There's like all kinds of Christmassy music and stuff like that. So I feel like it's a Christmas movie, and it's it's a it's a great Batman movie. It's my favorite Batman movie. On some days. Right now, it might be my favorite Batman movie. I think it's a lot of fun. Tim Burton, we talked about him in Wednesday and how he's kind of lost his style and edge a little bit, and this is just Tim Burton's style and Tim Burton's edge. This is Tim Burton's Batman. When we talked today about like, oh, James Gunn's Suicide Squad, it really felt like a James Gunn movie. Like, oh, Matt Reeves' Batman really felt like a Matt Reeves movie, and this feels exactly like a Tim Burton movie. It has Tim Burton style everywhere. It's so like kooky and crazy, but I feel like it is contained within the Christmas timeline. It has a lot of Christmas visuals, and I feel like it's a Christmas movie. Every year, a theater near me in Chicago screens this a couple of times during December because it's a Christmas movie, and they include it in the lineup. So to me, that makes it count.
All right. And where's that streaming at? HBO Max?
Right now, yep, it's on HBO Max with the rest of the Batman movies, and that's the only place you can stream it right now without having to pay for it.
All right. And that takes me to your number 3. What's your number 3?
My number 3 is one that I know has a huge cult following. I'm not necessarily part of the cult, but I am part of the following, and that is Nightmare Before Christmas. I'm a big fan of this movie. I love the aesthetic of this and the visuals of this. There's just so much iconic so many iconic characters and so much iconic, you know, looks and visuals, and the buildings are so creative and cool, and they're just bending backwards, and I just love the way this movie looks. It's such a cool movie, and I love the blending of Halloween and Christmas. It's one that I watch a couple of times a year because I like to watch it like towards the end of October to get myself like in the mood for Halloween, and I like to watch it again like in November to get myself in the mood for Christmas, and now I like to watch it again around Christmas because I want to get myself in the Christmas mood again. So it's one that I watch a lot every year, and I love the music, I love the setting, I love the characters. It's something that I've really connected to a lot. So yeah, for me, I'm not part of the people who gets tattoos of this movie or anything like that and lives by this movie, but it's one that I watch every year. So for me, it's got to make that list.
Yeah, definitely. It's the movie that kept Hot Topic in business for 20 years, you know?
And it's on Disney Plus right now. So yeah, you got your Disney Plus subscription. Watch yourself a classic. Treat yourself to Nightmare Before Christmas. You've watched it before. Watch it again. It's great.
It's a movie. And it's fine. I just like dogging on it because it gets so much hype for a movie that's like, it's good, but people act like it's some world-changing thing. And that takes me to the number 2 on my list, which I don't believe is on your list, even though I've told everyone I've ever met. That's not true, but I've told enough people to watch it, and that's currently streaming on Tubi. Joyeux Noel, not really based on one individual story, but based on multiple stories of soldiers from all sides during World War I coming together on Christmas Day, basically having a truce that was more or less figured out on the battlefield. It wasn't figured out by the generals or the world leaders. It was more everyone fighting on the battlefields kind of had their own truce setting up because it was Christmas and they all celebrated Christmas and they didn't want to fight on Christmas. And it's kind of like this amalgamation of various stories during World War I kind of condensed into this one story, and it has a lot of great, powerful moments. It's got Diane Kruger, who people are going to recognize from Inglourious Basterds and National Treasure. She's one of the leads in it. And Daniel Bruhl, who people will recognize from the MCU, is in it as well, and also from Inglourious Basterds. And I believe in 2005 it won the Oscar for Best Foreign Language Film, but it's not fully in foreign language because of it's you have the Scottish, the French, and the German. So I'd say about a third of it's in English with the Scottish, a third of it's in German, and a third of it's in French. Um, but yeah, it's just a really well-made movie. Like I said, it's free on Tubi, so you probably don't have Tubi, but Tubi is free to get, so you can just go on whatever service you use on your smart TV, download Tubi, and type in Joy Noel.
Believe it or not, Joe, I have seen this.
Oh shit!
I actually liked this. It was definitely slightly hallmarky at parts, but I thought it was a good movie. Definitely a great premise, and I think it focuses on like the humanity of war. The fact that it's not just about like, big-minded leaders of countries declaring war on each other and getting their egos clashing, and there's like these lives that are put at stake. Especially World War One, which was a very much like non a war that happened for not a lot of important reasons. It was just kind of a bunch of connected countries and all these truces all these kind of like contracts being called on, essentially. And a war over nothing is kind of what World War One felt like. And I enjoyed this movie a lot. It's not one that I thought of as a top 10 list at all. Not one that is like on my rotation at all, but I do like this one, and it has a great message, a great heart to it. And that's something I like about a Christmas movie a lot. Is like, does it have that redemptive kind of hope heart, in there? And I think this has that heart there, so I liked it.
All right. And what was your number two?
My number two, uh, this may be a hot take for some people. I'm not sure how hot this take is, but my number two is Ron Howard's How the Grinch Stole Christmas, starring Jim Carrey. Uh, I think this is such a crazy, fun movie. I love this movie. I watch it every single year, not just once, but like a couple of times during the month of December. I think it's so much fun, and the way they build Whoville with this live action kind of crazy big aesthetic. I think it's a really great example of like what a live action adaptation of an animated movie actually can be like, and we see a lot of what Disney's doing with that premise now, and they're making like the most boring movies you possibly can make with like Lion King and Beauty and the Beast that are just kind of like these exact replicas of the first movie. And I think this movie shows how you can take the idea of the animated Grinch premise and turn it into this really cool thing that feels like a live world with crazy colors and visuals. And the Who's have all these like unique facial structures, and everything kind of has this really touch of whimsical to it that I think just makes it feel like a Dr. Seuss book come to life. It's one of my favorite Christmas movies. Obviously, it's in my top two. It's one that I watch all the time, and I think it's kind of underrated in a way. It's not one that's put up there as like the 5 out of 5 Christmas movies every year, and it's not necessarily put in the same breath as the original. I know a lot of people hold the animated movie in high regard, but I feel like this is a huge, huge, great step up. Not from an already really, really good animated movie, but I think this is a great, great take on that idea.
All right. I don't hate the pick. I was never the massive fan of that, but I do think people hate on it for no reason. I think it is a good movie. It's just not one that is in my rotation. I know you're number one. I figured it out. I can
You can
put
do the math,
context clues together. However, we haven't talked about my number one today. We did talk about it on last week's show because it was our movie of the week, and that is the Bill Murray classic Scrooged, currently on both Prime and Paramount Plus. We talked about it last week. I just want to reiterate: it's peak Bill Murray, a type of character he was born to play. His character Frank Cross is essentially a quote unquote modern day Scrooge, or Ebenezer Scrooge, and he's a TV producer who cares more about like the production of his live television event more than actually spreading the message of Christmas, and he slowly learns that it's the message of Christmas that's more the most important thing. So, good movie. Check it out. Like I said, it's on Amazon Prime and Paramount Plus. So if you have either of those services, check it out because it is my favorite movie currently on streaming. Because the world at large hates Christmas and won't allow the world to watch Die Hard this year, I guess. I penciled it in as my number one because it's been on HBO Max for as long as I've been aware. Had it on my list, marked it as number one, and I'm like, let me double check. Couldn't find it anywhere. It's not streaming anywhere, except
Technically,
for, like,
if you have
Stars.
stars, you can watch it, but that's the only place.
Yeah. So, bah humbug. Christmas is dead. No Die Hard this year for people. I have it on DVD, so I can still watch it. But
Yeah, I reiterate Joe's pick for Scrooge. I don't know about number one, but it's definitely a really, really great Christmas movie. I have Christmas Carol in my top 10 because I just love that story, so I wouldn't argue against Scrooge being your favorite take on that story, because there's just some great, great takes on that story. So Scrooge is definitely one of the good takes. We just watched it, we just talked about it, so you can go back to get more of our thoughts. But yeah, definitely a top tier Bill Murray performance. And if you're a fan of Bill Murray's shtick and like his better than everything over it kind of attitude, I think you'd have a great time with this. It's a great Bill Murray performance and one of the best that I've seen from him.
All right. So do you want to build the top five for the show? Because I feel like we have two movies in common, and the rest is just not at all in common.
Well, I do have to give my number one. You
Oh
know,
yeah. Sorry. Which
you
it
know,
would be our show's number one.
it's easy to see why I picked this one. It's already on Joe's list, so if you've been paying attention, you know what my pick is here. But it's Elf.
Yeah.
I think this is a great movie. I watched it all the time every year. My family used to gather on the TV and watch this like so many times throughout Christmas. We'd always put it on when we're packing gifts, or put it on when we're opening gifts, or put it on during Christmas dinner, and maybe all three. Because we talk about how Santa Claus is kind of like the iconic version of what Santa is, and this is the iconic version of what an elf is. You can't make an elf anytime there's like an elf in a commercial, an elf in another movie, an elf in any TV show. It feels like they're aping this movie in some kind of way because they're picking that Will Ferrell big energy kind of everything is incredible, exciting kind of take on the elf. And yeah, Will Ferrell's performance in this is such a joy to watch, and I think he makes this such a fun movie to watch. With any other actor, this could have become so annoying and so one note, but I think Will Ferrell is able to play that one note so well and find all the different kind of like ways you can play that one note, and how he can make that sad, and how he can make that heartfelt, and how he can make that funny. And the performance is just so great here, and I love watching that. It fills me with Christmas joy. It makes you really want to sing and be in the holiday spirit. So for me, that's what a Christmas movie should do, is get you ready for Christmas, and this movie gets me ready for Christmas.
Can I say something that maybe sounds like a hot take, but maybe it isn't at all? That Elf is far and away Will Ferrell's best movie.
I definitely think it is. I think it's easily his best performance. It's able to find his energy and use it so well, because he can be kind of annoying in other stuff. I'll be honest. I'm not.
Yeah.
I mean, he's good in some stuff, but when he misses, he really misses, and
Yeah.
I think this shows like exactly what Will Ferrell can do comedically.
Yeah. James Caan, Mary Steenburgen.
Oh, and the James Caan casting is great too, because he plays into like your knowledge of James Caan as part of The Godfather and things like that. So, yeah, I really like the James Caan casting too. I don't want him to get overshadowed too much because he gives a great performance here, playing his type but kind of playing against it too because of the movie he's in.
Yeah, it was funny. I've heard like different things on set of like James Caan did not understand this movie at all, and Jon Favreau basically just had to keep reassuring him and doing what he was doing.
I know, yeah. I've heard some great stories on set from that. So yeah, I feel like that would be a fun set if it was like we wanted to get a fly on the wall kind of set. I feel like that'd be a one, but not just because of that, but I also feel like it'd be a joy to watch Will Ferrell goof around.
Yeah, yeah. Especially like all those like B-roll scenes of him like walking through New York City, where apparently like they didn't have permits, they didn't get permission. It was just Jon Favreau just unleashed Will Ferrell as Buddy the Elf onto New York City and just filmed whatever happened.
Yeah, those would be really fun to watch. I can't imagine some of the people in New York would be roasting that guy.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you got to say before we move on to our final segment? And I don't even know how we're going to pick this week.
I say we're moving on. I'm gonna say with my second beer. This is one is called Island of Misfit Beers. It's very much in theme. It has the doll from Rudolph on there. This is a Belgian ale with caramel, raisins, and holiday cheer. So it's gonna have some more holiday cheer going into our top five, Joe.
Nice. All right. So our final segment, I think it's very clear and obvious. Our number one is going to be Elf. It was your number one. It was my number 5.
Yeah, I definitely think that's number one. It'll be interesting to see because we don't have a lot of crossover here. I don't know. We had like one or two.
So you're number 1. So because you get your 1 at 1, can you at least concede to me that 2 is the original Home Alone? Because you had Home Alone 2 on your list.
I do have Home Alone 2. It's in my top 5. I can see that. I could put Home Alone 2 at 2.
Home Alone 2 or Home Alone?
Home Alone, not Home Alone. I feel like that's a good
I mean,
argument.
for me, it's hard because I feel like they're both equally good. It's just whenever how my mind works, whenever I make a list like this, it's hard to do the sequel and not the original unless I'm doing like a list of movie sequels or something.
But for me though, the second one is more Christmas. You know, there's a lot of Christmas
Mm,
going on in that second
there
one.
is. You make good points. We'll come back to it. Two is going to be either Home Alone or Home Alone 2. We just have to figure it out.
You
So
got it.
my one is off the list. Or no, my number one is not on the list. So 3, Scrooged.
I could say three Scrooged. It's not on my list, but I like Scrooged. You know, I gave it a positive review last week.
So our number ones are off the board. And that brings us to our number twos. We have Joyeux Noel and the Ron Howard Grinch, which I feel like are just going to be our 4 and our 5. So our mark at that point is to figure out who gets the 4 spot and who gets the 5 spot.
Look, so I have the one spot right now, right? And
Yeah, you currently have the 1 spot, and we kind of share the 2 spot.
so how would you feel if you went Joe Noel and then Grinch, but then Home Alone 2 was at number 2?
I will concede to all those points. So and where's Ron Howard Grinch currently streaming?
Currently on Disney Plus. No, HBO Max. HBO Max. And also on DirecTV. I don't know. I didn't know they had a DirecTV streaming platform, but if you got DirecTV, I guess you can watch Grinch.
All right, so our official top 5 streaming movies, according to the Hand Plus, we have Ron Howard's How the Grinch Stole Christmas, currently streaming on HBO Max. At number 4, we have Joyeux Noel, currently on Tubi. At 3, we have Scrooged, currently on Prime and Paramount Plus. At 2, we have Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, currently on Disney Plus. And at number 1, we have Elf, currently on HBO Max.
I like that top 5.
So if you got some movies you want to watch, it's a good variety of movies. Something. If you don't like at least one of the movies in that top 5, then you're watching movies wrong, in my opinion.
Bah humbug to you then.
Bah
You know?
humbug to you. And now we move on to our final topic of the night. Something I don't know how we're gonna figure out. Maybe I hope you have a pick for this. And this is our MVP of the week. This is our sole entity that we think gave the best performance of the week. Could be a behind-the-scenes person. Maybe the music in a future episode of The Mandalorian just hits hard and we're like, Ludwig Göransson deserves to be MVP of the week. Maybe a showrunner just crushes a show and we're like, they're the MVP. Or we're like, this character was just fun. It was the writing, it was the performance, it was the directing, everything, and we just give the MVP to the character itself. It's just what single entity are we voting for? And do you have any thoughts?
I got two thoughts for you, Joe. My first is a pick of a writer who made multiple appearances on both of our lists, and that is Charles Dickens. You know, you got to give Charles Dickens the MVP for Christmas Carol, and for being the man who invented Christmas. You know, so I feel like I got an argument for Charles Dickens in there. My second is also a person who made multiple appearances on our list. The Holly Jolly Man himself, you know, Santa Claus is our MVP for the week. You know, our Christmas top 10. How do you not put Santa Claus in your MVP spot?
See, the person I thought you were going to go with, different direction than I was expecting, is more of a topic we talked about earlier in our show. My prediction of where you were going to go is Mike White, the creator and showrunner of White Lotus.
I mean, that's an actual good choice, I feel like, if you're going for the actual streaming content
to
of
me,
the episode.
I personally feel like it's down to two. I think if we want to go with Survivor runner-up Mike White, or if we want to go with writer of Scrooged and star of The Man Who Invented Christmas, Charles Dickens.
I feel like the Charles Dickens pick is more unique, you know, so I feel like that would be a fun pick. You know, you go through our list of MVPs in a year and you're like, Charles Dickens?
Yeah.
Oh, it was a Christmas
Here's
episode.
Mike White probably going to win a couple Emmys for White Lotus, right?
He
He
might win a
doesn't
couple handies next
need
week.
what?
He might get a couple handies next week on our award show,
Oh
Joe.
yeah, is our award show next week?
One of the weeks. Next week or the other
Upcoming
week.
upcoming week, we got our award show where we're going to be giving out handies for various awards. And yeah, like we said, Mike White, he's going to be winning awards galore. He doesn't need MVP of the week. You know who hasn't won a single Emmy and never will? Charles Dickens. The best we can do is give him the MVP of the week. And that is why, for me, I am giving MVP of the week to the writer of Scrooged, star of The Man Who Invented Christmas, and that is our MVP, Charles Dickens.
I love it, Joe. Great Christmas pick there.
All right, yeah. So join us next week. Have no idea what we're going to be talking about, but I promise to actually start watching content. I've just been busy, especially on the weekends. You know, there was a bit there where I wasn't really watching a lot of Detroit Lions football. It gave me more time on Sundays, but now my Sundays are devoted to former MVP winner Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions. First ever MVP winner. The reason I created the award just because I wanted an extra excuse to talk about Dan Campbell. But they're winning. They're playing good football. And so it's hard for me to try to fit time in. But I will work on that. I was supposed to watch the
Previous
Muppet
MVP
Christmas
winner,
Carol.
Dan Campbell.
What?
He won MVP of week on the show, Joe. Dan Campbell.
Yeah.
He's an MVP winner.
Yeah.
So good for him.
Good for him. We're going to figure out something to watch next week, and we will talk about it here, and we will make this quality content. And that is my promise
Merry
to
Christmas.
you that I may backtrack on if I don't have time to watch things. And without further ado, goodbye and Merry Christmas. Until next week, talk to the hand.